You're jamming our frequencies. Break off your transmission now. End your transmission completely.
You are listening to Terran TrekRanks, loyal subjects of the glorious Terran Empire. This is episode 47, featuring the top 5 things we just can't get over. Welcome, Terran followers. I am Jim Mirror Morehouse, and I am the host of the Terran TrekRanks. All hail the Empire. As always, you have joined us for a glorious conversation dissecting all those little nitpicky things about Star Trek that we just find funny and juvenile and that we just like to make fun of. So, this is the place for anyone who just really likes to make fun of and be snarky about Star Trek without any real purpose or end game to a conversation. That's what we're doing tonight. We're getting super snarky again as we go through our top 5 things that we just can't get over as it relates to Star Trek. Should be awesome. And joining us for tonight's Terran TrekRanks Roundtable are 3 of our cranky regulars. We've got Carlos, the Reliant Miranda, Alex, Tiberius Perry, and Jenn, Regina Andor, Tifft. So welcome, Terran comrades. Are you guys there, Carlos?
100%.
Long live the Empire.
For the record, I'm stroking my goatee as we speak.
Oh, well, that is perfect. All right, we're going to get right into this. And as always, we're going to kick this all off with our Terran TrekRanks recalibration. As regular listeners will know, general order number 1 here at Terran TrekRanks is that we love to really just overthink Trek for no reason at all. And we usually do that via some deep dive topics just to get the complaining started. And that's why this podcast exists, just to bitch and moan about this crap. And remember, all wrong answers.
To our future plans, a future where we together will make the Empire glorious again.
And as Captain Gabriel Lorca just said, we're here to bring glory to the Empire tonight. Our show is about all the things that we love to bitch about in terms of Star Trek. We complain about all of it, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise, and that terrible Kelvin timeline and now Discovery. It's all in our crosshairs here on Terran TrekRanks.
Black alert. Black alert.
And we could even talk about Discovery, too. So if you get spoiled, well, that's your own damn fault. Okay.
I'm picking up a transmission, heavily distorted.
And despite that heavy distortion, if you would like to join the Terran TrekRanks movement, the best way to do that is to find us on Twitter at TrekRanks or me directly at Enterprise Extra. And you can also call and leave us a message with your own picks at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. You can also find us on the Mirror World Wide Web at TrekRanks.com. And once again, glory to the Empire. Okay, Carlos, Alex, and Jenn, why don't you let all of our Terran loyalists know how they can get a hold of you guys? Carlos?
I am always on Twitter, bitching and moaning about Star Trek, along with all of you. And my handle is at Double Mac, MACC, because nothing gets me crankier than a lot of espresso. So that's my handle. And I look forward to hearing from people on Twitter.
Get this man his coffee. All right, Jenn, how about you?
Well, I'm in hiding and recording this from a secure location, but if you really have to get a transmission to me, you can contact me on Twitter also. My code name is at @EatAtQuarks. But don't bother me unless it's really important, please.
That toad. All right, Alex, how about you?
And there's nothing I enjoy more than somebody getting all up in my mentions, bitching about Star Trek and snarking on some ridiculous details. So you can find me on Twitter at Alexander T. Perry.
I feel like that's actually true.
All right, so let's get into today's show. And in the Terran Empire, we don't waste our time with diagnostic cycles or prime directives or anything like that. We're just going to jump straight into our Terran rules for today's great topic.
A Terran who doesn't know the rules.
Well, we'll see to it that he learns them.
One more reminder on how we go through everything here at Terran TrekRanks and our Terran rules. First, each of us will reveal our original Terran TrekRanks 5 words and a hashtag summary to tease our pick. Then we'll just start bitching about whatever it is in Trek that we just can't get over. And at the end, we'll probably get a few secondary system selections for any little bit of extra complaining we want to get into today's show. And if we happen to have any mirror duplicates on tonight's show, make sure you listen for the mirror defiant torpedo. Okay. Carlos, we're starting with you. For round 5, what the hell can you just not get over?
Okay. I have to be honest. Originally, this was going to be my number 1 pick. And the very last minute, I switched the order around. This is something that I have never been able to let go of. And if I'm being honest, this is probably... So I started watching Star Trek when I was about 9 or 10 years old. And this was probably the first time when I watched something live that just really, like the first time I was really critical of Star Trek. So this one's kind of personal for me. The 5 words are, we have to go back. The hashtag is, if I could turn back time. and it's the very last minute, and I actually mean the last 60 seconds, of Voyager's pilot Caretaker. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have a very complicated history with Voyager. I like a lot of things with Voyager. Actually, Caretaker is my favorite pilot, but that last 1 minute just drives me up a wall because to me, it symbolizes kind of the wasted potential that is Star Trek Voyager. I mean, I think that the way they integrated their Maquis crew at the very end just immediately does such a disservice to, 1, the Maquis as a group, and 2, to the characters of Chakotay and B'Elanna. I do think that the crew should have been integrated at some point, but it just didn't make any sense to me as a 13 or 14-year-old, however old that was when Caretaker aired. And I just feel like it was a massive mistake. I feel like they should have integrated the crews, but over a very, very long arc that should have been, at least several seasons. And that conflict that they were doing so well on Deep Space Nine should have been done on Voyager in their own style, in their own way. You don't necessarily want to copy it, but I think it was just a massive disservice to the show as a whole. To the characters of Chakotay and B'Elanna, particularly B'Elanna. And it's just something that's always, from the moment I watched it, I don't know, 20 years ago, whenever it was, now, it's just something that's always bugged me about Voyager.
Can't wait to hear your top 4.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. No, I get it. It was too quick. It's a product of the 90s. It's what it was. They made the decision immediately. And, well, I hate to break it to 13-year-old Carlos, but that was never going to happen because it's a product.
I know.
That's what the show was. All right, Jenn and Alex, any comments on that one?
Yeah, I mean, that was such an untapped well of potential storylines, too, of conflict between the 2 crews. That I would have liked to see more. But I mean, you say the Maquis integrating, but also just the Starfleet members getting used to these, these people wearing these uniforms who quote unquote didn't earn them. You know what I mean? And you didn't see too much of that. And it's a waste of a lot of potential storylines.
Carlos, I knew you were going to stab me in the heart at some point, but I didn't realize it was going to be on the first bloody pick.
Oh, Alex, it's always do it right away, all right? And from the back, because it's the safest way.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, I think there's a reason why worst case scenario is one of the best episodes of the show.
Yes.
Is because it does, at least over the first 20, 25 minutes, kind of delve into sort of a what if there had been a more kind of intense Starfleet Maquis conflict storyline. So I hear you.
Good start. Jenn, let's hear your number 5 pick. What can you not get over?
Okay. So my number 5 pick is my most pedantic pick, which of course makes it the best pick for Terran TrekRanks. So, but it's still my number 5. Okay. My 5 words in a hashtag. Roses are red, violets are #blue. Spock is a science officer, and so are you. It's Deep Space Nine, Season 5, Episode 6, Trials and Tribulations. The fact that Jadzia Dax is wearing a red 23rd century uniform instead of a blue one.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
I never thought of that.
Yes.
It irks me so much. Like, and it's funny because this episode, this is literally the only problem I have with Trials and Tribulations. Otherwise, pretty much a perfect hour of television. Okay, so first of all, you have to ask yourself why Jadzia's the only one wearing the wrong colors. And there's no other reason than the fact that she's a female, and maybe Terry Farrell looked fabulous in red, which she does. Or maybe, Uhura, she wore red. She was a woman. Let's put Jadzia in red. No matter what explanation for it, there's no good one. So that raises my hackles a little bit. But even worse is in the episode, literally seconds before they reveal Jadzia, she's twirling in her beehive and everything. Bashir, O'Brien, and Sisko are having a conversation about the colors they're wearing. And Bashir thinks O'Brien and Sisko are in the wrong colors. And they explain to him, that it was different. Gold was, command was gold, ops was red, blah, blah, blah. No mention that Jadzia is in the wrong colors, So so that it draws attention to it. But then the reason why this made it on my list is it's further annoying because Jadzia spends the entire episode basically playing the part of Spock. She literally quotes his line from The Trouble with Tribbles, about the estimate of how many Tribbles there are now. She literally quotes him. She does her version of a Spock eyebrow raise at one point. There's a really fun scene where Sisko and Jadzia have like a real Kirk Spock dynamic. It's the one where they're pretending to work in the conduit and they see.
And she's checking out Spock.
Yeah, she's like, oh, he's so handsome, and Spock and Sisko sets her up the way Kirk would set up Spock. He's like, oh yeah, Kirk was a real ladies' man, and Jadzia says, oh no, I'm talking about Spock. He's so handsome. But that that's a real Kirk and Spock thing. Where like Kirk would set him up, be the straight man, and then Spock would say the opposite of what Kirk expected. And I always loved that, and I thought that would have just made it even better if they were in the gold and blue. So that's why that raises to the level of this list for me.
Hey Jen, thanks for ruining Trials and Tribulations.
Yeah.
I will never watch it the same way again.
It's literally the only thing.
Okay, can I say that I love how pedantic that is? Like, that's amazing. I love that.
I've got some pedantic picks coming up.
I have 5 pedantic picks, so we're all good.
Oh, good. I don't feel so bad.
I love it.
No, gentlemen, none of mine are pedantic. Mine are like massive.
Oh my God.
The rest of mine are pretty massive.
Hey, I guess we know your Prime Directive. All right, that is
Wait, maybe the only thing I can think about now that you raise this is that maybe they wanted to make sure that the crew, like that O'Brien, Bashir, that all the colors were represented.
But they were. See, O'Brien had red.
I guess O'Brien was red. Yeah, you're right.
And you said it. It's 100% because Uhura wore red.
Right.
And
right. Ugh. Yes. It just takes me out of it for a moment,
All right.
But
that's an awesome pick. I love it. Alex, let's move on. Round 5.
Okay.
Just knock it over.
5-word summary. Galactic placements make absolutely no sense. # 10,000 light years, and there you are. The episode I picked is Star Trek Voyager Season 5, Episode 21, Juggernaut. Now, let me explain what I mean by this. So when we get into Season 4 of Star Trek Voyager, so the first few seasons, they're sort of slowly making progress over the course of space. And so they keep running into the same aliens all over again, right? We get the Kazon for 2 seasons, we get the Vidians over a season and a half. But once they hit that Borg space, beginning at the end of Season 3, they start making progressively larger one-time leaps through the galaxy. At the beginning of Season 5, we encounter a race called the Malons. In the middle of Season 5, Voyager picks up a transwarp coil and travels 10,000 light years. And then 3 episodes later, who do they run into again? the Malons. The last 3 seasons were full of this, where it made no sense that they kept running into the same aliens, despite making significant headway towards the Alpha Quadrant. You know, the hierarchy must be spread over like 20,000 light years based on the distance they traveled from Tinkatenna Dr. Spy to Renaissance Man in the penultimate episode. It bothers me so much because it totally takes me out of the show, because I'm like, what are you even doing here? You should be like 10 years behind this crew. They should be meeting new aliens. Of course, I get it. Production reasons, blah, blah, blah. Bunch of great episodes. Juggernaut's a great episode, but it's one of those things that when I start watching it and I'm like, oh, it's these guys again, it bothers me every time. And I kind of, part of me wants to like take Voyager and chop it up and put it back in a way that makes sense based on how far they traveled and where. That is just one of 5 very pedantic choices, but I can't get over it.
Very pedantic. I love it. That's hilarious. The only one that ever really bugged me was Jatrell, a great episode where they go all the way back to Talix.
Yeah, just like that.
Go, wait, you're literally starting over.
By the way, Alex, I'm with you. Let's edit all of Voyager. For me, Voyager would be 35 episodes.
Oh, shut up.
35 episodes.
I'm just talking about moving Juggernaut before Dark Frontier, man.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I got way too excited there.
All right, Jen, any quick comments on that?
Well, I get it. I do. But I that one doesn't bother me as much because I feel like they do the same thing in the Alpha Quadrant.
That's fair.
You know, when they're traveling everywhere. So I just pretend like there's an Alpha Quadrant and this is where some people live, and there's a Delta Quadrant and this is where other species live. And
so I have a
those are their neighborhoods. It's in my mind I can get over it.
I have a mental workaround, which is that for the Malons specifically, in Night, where they're first introduced, we see they found a wormhole to get to a totally different part of space to dump all this crap. And I think that they, in my mind, they are particularly adept at finding spatial anomalies that cover large areas of space because they need to get this stuff as far away as they can. And that explanation almost satisfies me, which is why this is my number 5 pick. But they get as we go through these picks, my headcanon explanations become progressively more wishy-washy until the last one I just cannot handle.
You fixed it. All right. Those were 3 terrible picks. And now we're going to go on to my pick, which is awesome. My number 5.
Your pick's going to suck too, Jim.
Yes, it is. My 5 words in a hashtag. Dumbest science fiction concept ever. Hashtag. And Geordi hates old people. It's the Dyson sphere and Geordi's treatment of Scotty and Relics. I can't get over it. It's TNG, Relics. I mean, first up, there's actually a lot to love in this episode. Obviously, Scotty, how he survived in the transporter is just brilliant. James Doohan's performance is awesome. It's great seeing him. The scene with Scotty and Picard on the Enterprise bridge is the best. But these 2 big issues just kill this episode for me. First of all, the Dyson sphere is just the dumbest thing ever. And I am talking about in all of Star Trek. I would believe everything. Alternate realities, psychic transferences, all the craziest far-fetched ideas of jumping around time like Alex was, or jumping around space like Alex just mentioned. There's nothing dumber than the concept of a spherical man-made structure built around a star that is basically the circumference of a planet's rotation around its sun. It's ridiculous, preposterous. It makes no sense. I would believe in folding space and traveling from one end of the galaxy to the other in a second. And omnipotent beings, but not that. And then second, why is Geordi such a jerk to Scotty? I mean, the guy just survived 80 years in a transporter, and Geordi is just being a little petulant baby, and it really drives me crazy. So those are my 2 things. Any comments, any feedback?
Okay, yeah. As an engineer myself, the Geordi thing really, really bugs me here. Because this is this is a name that Geordi read about in his books at Starfleet Academy, and he's treating him like he's some grandpa who wandered in, to engineer, and it's just, I mean, he should at least be enjoying the experience of meeting one of the forefathers of his profession. So yeah, it's frustrating, and it's a little out of character too, I think, for Geordi.
Is it a little out of character for Geordi? Let me say something here that might be very controversial.
No, you know what?
Okay.
I take that back. Go ahead.
You're about to spin some truth, Carlos.
Bring it, Carlos. Bring it.
Okay, Geordi is a creepy ass most of the time. Okay, first and foremost, the way he treats and talks about women is like terrifying to me.
Absolutely.
One. Okay. Two, really, if you look at his personal relationships with a lot of people, it's it's weird. He's just like a weird guy. And so I don't know if it's so out of character. I think I want to make sure that you divorce LeVar Burton from Geordi.
You know what? Yeah. Now that you say that, I try to ignore the episode where him and Dr. Brahms, in the holodeck, and he gets her to apologize to him for his creepiness, and that pisses me off. But he doesn't have any patience with Barkley. He doesn't have any patience with even Data sometimes, and they have a nice friendship, but sometimes he just can't, doesn't have the patience for it. And I totally hear where you're coming from. Now I take back my statement.
Alex, you want to pile on Geordi?
Man, Carlos Miranda just dropped some truth bombs right on the surface of Harlap.
Mm-hmm. You would find me a formidable enemy, Alex.
All right, let's move on to round 4. Carlos, what do you got?
I kind of feel like my Geordi one was enough of a pick.
You got a bonus pick in there.
A bonus pick, exactly. So my number 2 pick. My 5 words are: that opening scene does rock. # who wants to live forever. And it is my beef with Star Trek Insurrection as a whole. So a lot of people, you read, you talk to people, and they're like, oh, but it feels like Insurrection feels like a really fun, 2-parter episode.
It does, Carlos.
That is wrong.
No, that's right.
That is not a good excuse. Okay. This is a movie. I want big epic Star Trek when it comes to my movies.
Nope.
Now, here we go. It's my turn to speak. I have the mic. So there's a lot I love about this movie. A lot. I love the banter between the crew in like these little moments. I think the duck blind opening is phenomenal. The Picard Worf chasing Data in the shuttle sequence. There's a lot of things that I love about this movie. I think the Enterprise E looks amazing in this movie. The special effects, there's a lot. But overall, it just doesn't come together for me at all. And I get the desire to kind of have like a sharp tonal shift from the darkness and of First Contact. So it's nothing with the tone of the movie. It just doesn't work for me. It seems like they really scaled back the epicness of TNG, particularly after First Contact. And like the Baku, I think they are they're the worst. Don't bother saving them. Please. And I just, it doesn't come together for me. So to me, as a follow-up to First Contact, I was always so disappointed in this movie. So to me, it just doesn't come together, and I want it to so much, but it just doesn't work.
Jenn, Alex, any comments?
How many bad takes does it take, Carlos, before it becomes wrong? 1,000, 50,000, 1,000,000? How many takes, Carlos?
Just one. Just one. I agree with the bad guys. I'm sorry.
So is this your least favorite movie
of all of them?
All of them? I'm just saying, why did this make your list versus another movie that you didn't like?
Others make my list, Jenn.
Okay.
Don't get ahead of yourself.
I'm just gonna say, all I ever want from the movies is an awesome 2-hour episode. I don't need big and epic. And if it had been big and epic after First Contact, you would have been disappointed because it wouldn't have matched it. They needed to change the pace. It's what they did. It's awesome, but awesome pick. We're moving on. Jenn, round 4. What do you got?
Okay, round 4. 5 words. A straight up character assassination. # where did this slut shaming terrorist come from? This is Deep Space Nine, Season 5, Episode 7, Let He Who Is Without Sin, the bizarre actions of a character that they call Worf, but who does not act like any Worf I've ever met.
Great pick.
Oh.
So,
Such a good pick.
Changeling Worf, that's my headcanon.
A changeling Worf, yeah. That's a great headcanon. And you have to do something like that to kind of reconcile what he does in this episode.
Kind of makes you hate Worf.
Yes, it does. It does. And okay, so I'll start with, I called him a slut-shaming terrorist in this episode. So let me go through this, what he actually does. We'll start with the slut-shaming. So Worf is a prude. We know that. We've seen that before. But that's not what happens here. What happens here is him being awful and controlling with Jadzia. He says things straight out of, an abusive boyfriend's handbook. He doesn't want her.
Or a president of the United States.
Yeah. Oh, don't even get me started. I'm already worked up, Carlos. But yeah, I mean, he gets mad at her for having lunch with Captain Baudet. He says things like, "Everything you do reflects on me," and a Klingon woman would not give me cause for suspicion. It's not proper for you to have lunch with the next lover. Like the stuff that's straight up textbook, right? And first of all, Worf, is this your first time meeting Jadzia? Like this, why wouldn't this stuff come up? They've been dating for a while at this point, so it makes no sense that he cares that she has lunch with Captain Baudet. You know what I mean? But this is upsetting because if this was my first introduction to these characters, I would tell Jadzia to run away as fast as she could from this guy. And it makes me like, if this was my first episode, I would think that they were going down the path of a storyline where he ends up murdering her. Like that's how bad that's how awful he is. And that's not, and the reason why this made my list for this is because this is terribly sad, because I love the Jadzia Worf relationship. In literally every other episode, I love their dynamic. And this one is just, it just does not fit with their relationship. It doesn't fit with the character of Worf, and it's awful and terrible. Disgusting.
It's terrible.
It is.
You are 100% right. It's like the second worst episode of DS9 TrekRanks. And I will say this: I hope the rest of your list is also defending Jadzia.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Oh no, I don't think it is, but it should be. It should. No, I'm not done.
You're still.
You're going to let me talk, because that was just the slut shaming. Now we get to the terrorist part, because then Worf gets so angry at Jadzia for having the nerve to make pottery with Vanessa Williams that he up and joins a right-wing extremist terrorist group. What? Like, where the hell did that come from? And
no, that's terrible.
And it's literally Worf's idea to sabotage the weather grid. That's his idea. He comes up with that. He doesn't just like join their group. He leads them in this horrible act of terrorism. So he's responsible for all the damage that he's going to cause on this planet. He would have been responsible for every death those earthquakes would have caused if he didn't, miraculously come to his senses at the end of the episode for whatever reason, to wrap things up.
I'm moving this to dead last.
Seriously. Like, the Worf we know would never, ever have done that. Even if he did agree with the essentialists bullshit that they spread, he would never have gone along with those tactics. Those tactics have no honor. And Worf, son of Moog, has honor in every other episode we've ever seen him in. I'm done now. Thank you.
I can barely function after that. It's so bad. Anybody?
It's fun fact, that episode was directed by Renee Bergeron.
Yes.
So, I hate that episode so much. Yep. I genuinely have not seen it in like well over a decade, easily.
Yep.
Like, it's terrible. So I'm with you. I agree with your rant completely. Long live the Empire.
And this is the one where he gives the explanation for why he's behaving like such a dick is because he on a soccer field once accidentally killed a kid, right?
Yes.
This is that episode. Yeah. Which it doesn't make sense at all, and doesn't even like begin to justify the things that he did in that episode. Oh, repugnant.
That's some Deanna Troi level psychotherapy. All right.
Yeah. All right, Alex, let's go back to you. Your round 4 pick.
All right. 5-word summary. Married couple have never met. hashtag what are these little dark things? And it is a scene, it is an episode I love and a scene that I cannot stand. And every time I watch this episode, I have to fast forward through it. And it is Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 4, Episode 12, The Wounded. And the scene I am referring to is the opening scene in which O'Brien and Keiko, who just got married not 2 episodes before, are behaving like they've never met each other before. They don't know what each other eats for breakfast. They have no chemistry whatsoever in this scene. It is like watching 2 strangers sit down across the table from each other. And it you know, The Next Generation often has problems with creating fully rounded characters. And I think it comes from 2 places. Not enough women in the writer's room and not enough older people who have some serious life experience behind them. Because that scene reads and plays like it was written by a 22-year-old who has had no experience with being in a relationship. It is so atrociously bad. I cannot get over how terrible it is. And the fact that those 2 characters then went on to another show and had a wonderful, wholesome, fulfilling relationship is amazing. But the way that it kicks off in this episode is just atrocious garbage.
My biggest issue with that whole scene is that Keiko doesn't know what capers are. I mean, I'm pretty sure she didn't know what capers are. That always bugged me. All right, Keiko and O'Brien and the Wounded. What do you got, Alex? I mean, Jenn and Carlos.
I agree with you 100%. And I think your analysis of the fact that, like, if you look at the writer room back then, it was like, you know, I mean, there were some grown-ups around, but it was like Ron and like Renee and Brandon, and like together they weren't like 50 years old or something, you know? So I think that's probably true in terms of the lack of worldly experience and relationships from the writer room at the time. I doubt that nowadays you would get a writer room of what like TNG had were on the 4th, 5th, and 6th season.
I agree that scene is awful, and I agree with your explanation of why. And to speak to your the lack of women in the writing room too. I think one of the reasons that people dislike the character of Keiko is because sometimes she's just written as the typical stereotype of a quote unquote nagging wife, you know, instead of giving her, you know, later. I mean, I love Keiko O'Brien.
Me too.
Me too.
I love her. Like, I will defend her. And she's wonderful when she's not in a scene with O'Brien. And O'Brien is wonderful when he's not in a scene with Keiko.
Yeah.
When they get them together, they just have no idea how to write a dynamic of a married couple.
100% right.
There are some good ones, but you're not wrong.
Overall.
Especially in terms of who was writing her. And that's a good one. Okay. Let's go to my round 4 pick to close it off. And I know people are going to hate me for this one, but that's the way we like it here on Terran TrekRanks.
I've got my hand over my dagger, getting ready to.
Exactly.
You better get it ready, because my choice here is what I think is the single most overrated piece of Star Trek ever.
Ooh.
Don't get me wrong. When this movie came out, I loved it.
Oh,
I was into it, but then it started to get dated as I saw it more. And I know this.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
He's
gonna say it.
And here it is. My 5 words and a hashtag: the long, dull search for boots. Hashtag not my Dax. It's Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. This is number 11 of 13 films at TrekRanks. And here's just the whole thing. The whole movie hinges on this ridiculous search for boots. It's like a quarter of the movie. It's not good. It's not good. From the phaser fire on the mashed potatoes to the dumb bait and switch with Dax, quote unquote Dax, you know, having like his ridged feet or whatever. It's ridiculous premise. The dumb boots. It just doesn't. None of it matters. It's good. Those dumb boots are going to lead to the killer. It's just nonsensical. And I love the Klingon stuff in this movie, and the final showdown with Chang, and the filming and the production quality. That's all great. But I will add that the assassination scene at the end is also pretty cheap. So, all right. That's it. It's mostly about the search for boots. But I think this movie is overrated. There we go.
What happened to you, Jim? Did you kill like a child on the soccer field, like when you were a kid? What happened to you? Who says these things? That's horrible. I disagree with you so much.
Insurrection is so much better than this movie.
That's it. I mean, fine. I will trade you Star Trek Insurrection for Undiscovered Country any day.
I'd watch Insurrection 10 times before I watch Undiscovered.
Oh my God.
I know this is like everybody's favorite, and I just don't think it dates well.
I watched it not long ago, and I was like, this movie's the best.
Alex, Jenn, any quick comments?
They're speechless.
I agree on what you just said about it being dated. That to me is a valid criticism of that movie, as opposed to any of the other ones. I'm just speechless because I'm trying to think about which
unpopular opinion. Let's just move on.
I'm just trying to think which one I let Undiscovered Country or Insurrection. I'd probably pick Insurrection over Undiscovered Country.
We really are in a mirror universe, ladies and gentlemen.
But get me on a different day, I guess. I think that's why I'm silent. My gears are turning. But it's those are interesting that those are your picks.
All I have to say is that we may not be done talking about the Undiscovered Country.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, we'll see if we get any duplicates. All right, let's move on to round 3. It's the ganglia round. Here we go. Carlos, what's your number 3 pick?
Okay, so this one is less of like a bitching one for me and much more of like a wishful, like, God, I wish this would have happened type pick. So my 5 words are Avenger-style Cardassian fighting team. And my hashtag is holding out for a hero. And it's something that as a kid, I always wanted. And in preparation for this, I watched Lower Decks last night, which is one of my all-time favorite episodes of Next Generation, by the way. And I really wish that on Deep Space Nine, we would have gotten an episode where Sito Jaxa, Ro Laren, and Thomas Riker, right, all like Cardassian prisoners, like something, I don't know what the story is, but that the fact that we never revisited them, because I love them so much as guest stars, and I love every single one of those characters, is a crime. And I just wish we could have gotten some kind of like, like Avenger-style, Defender-style team-up of these supporting characters and like an amazing escape from a Cardassian like penal colony. I just think that was such a missed opportunity. And I know that the writers and Ira Burr like didn't ever want to revisit those characters and that people always ask them about it. But I just think that like as a kid and now going, like now like a 36-year-old still obsessed with Star Trek is just like it's one of those things that I always saw it as a missed opportunity because those characters were just so good.
I love this pick. It's actually going to be more appropriate when we do top 5 unfinished storylines, which is on our long list.
Right.
Terran TrekRanks someday. That's fantastic. I would love to see that story. And there is a little bit of a missed opportunity there, especially with Sito Jaxa.
Ah, Sito. But it's not like this is my one that it's like, I'm not complaining. It's just I really wish that would have happened.
Perfect for the ganglia round.
Exactly.
I would have watched the hell out of that. That's a wonderful idea. But also, I think Lower Decks is one of my favorites too, Carlos. And I think her dying at the end of Lower Decks was just too perfect. Like it was awfully, it was terrible and sad. But I think as a story, like it really made a lot of impact. They managed to make you care about these characters that you just met 40 minutes ago and you felt her death, and I just love that. So I kind of her not being dead would have taken a little bit away from my rewatches of Lower Decks.
I understand. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
But I
feel like they could have been that story of like actually, it wasn't really her. I completely understand, and the way it's played out makes sense, and you're not wrong. But it's just because of exactly what you just said, because these characters are so great, particularly Ro.
Yes.
And Thomas Riker, and I love these characters so much, and everything that you said about the fact that we managed over the course of just 2 episodes, but really Lower Decks,
right?
You care so much about like Sito that you just just wanted it to happen.
I hear you.
Alex Kurtzman, if you're listening, give this man a call.
If you're listening to Terran TrekRanks.
Yeah, exactly. Get back to work on Picard if you're listening to this show.
Right.
Come on.
All right, Jen, what's your gangly around pick?
Okay, my gangly around pick. Okay, 5 words. Who the hell is he? Hashtag, you don't know either, do you? This is Enterprise never finding out who Future Guy is.
Good.
So good.
It drives me nuts. Okay, so this wasn't just some one-off bad guy, that you meet once and you didn't know who he was, the end. This was one of the mysteries that they laid out in the damn premiere, the series premiere. Broken Bow is the first time you see Future Guy. So when I saw that, when I saw Broken Bow, I loved it. That's one of my favorite premiere episodes. I was really taken, with the characters and the mission, but I really was enthralled by this idea of this temporal Cold War and this mysterious, shadowy, powerful bad guy, and I had all these theories and ideas about who this mysterious traveler from the future was going to turn out to be, and it was really exciting. And then we met him again and again and again, and nothing ever came out of it, And I think the reason that stinks so badly is because it's not like they had some intricate plan, for Future Guy in the Temporal Cold War that they just didn't have time to do because they got canceled. That's not what happened at all. They didn't know who he was. So I'm sitting here watching closely for every little detail, trying to come up, trying to find some clues that they might be dropping about who Future Guy is, and lo and behold, we come to find out that they didn't know either.
Oh, I hate it. I hate it.
Do you know? Because Brandon Braga has gone on.
Yeah. Okay.
Saying,
so over the years, so right after Nennet, they're like, oh, we don't know. And then they're like, well, it could have been a Romulan, or it could have been Future Archer, and now Braga, when he talks, he kind of claims that it's always been Future Archer, but that's not what he was saying before,
I don't know that.
So yeah, so I guess the theory is it's Future Archer, and that's fine, but I would have liked to have seen it.
It's a great pick. I give them a mild out because they got canceled, but you're not wrong. They did have they closed it off. They ended the Temporal War at the beginning of the 4th.
This was from season, like the very first episode, and they ended. They literally ended the Temporal Cold War plot, like with a bow.
But if it was going to be Archer, and they were planning on Archer and didn't talk about it, it would have been tough to do that without that being the series. But anyway, it's a great pick because it is it's a bummer. And you're right. Your best point is that this is a regular villain. He was seen, probably 5-6 times. Yep. So yeah, that's
it was I think it was 6 episodes. One.
Yeah, but he also loomed. It wasn't just that he was seen; he just loomed large over every Temporal Cold War episode. I never ever liked the Temporal Cold War. I just thought,
I love it.
I did not. I did not. I like Enterprise. No, all of you are wrong. All of you are wrong. I really like Enterprise. I have nothing against Enterprise, but it just never. That was never the arc that was really like did it for me. I just was good because I always felt like it just wasn't really going anywhere. And then and in later seasons, it's very obvious that it wasn't going anywhere, to the point that when Manny came in, he was like, yeah, first 2 episodes, we're getting rid of this. We're getting rid of this. And I think that it was just kind of like, it fizzled out. It was a cool idea and poorly executed.
How many bad takes, Carlos? How many?
Look, I'm not the one that said they didn't like Undiscovered Country, okay?
Alex, anything else?
Oh, 100%. I'm totally on board with this pick. It's ridiculous that they never kind of revealed who it was. I hate the idea of it being a future Jonathan Archer. I think that's a total character assassination.
I love that idea.
Waiting to happen.
Maybe it was Geordi.
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
This bothers me so much that I've created an intricate theory about how we could possibly see Future Guy in Discovery someday. But I if you're interested, I'll tell you later. I don't want to, I know that's not what this is about, but
no, I don't need to hear that, Jen, because it's now Geordi for me.
It is Jordy from now on.
Burton, he's available. Let's do it.
All right, let's continue with Alex's gangly around pick. What do you got?
Okay, 5-word summary. He is an android, you fools. Hashtag, he must have photographic memory. My pick for my gangly around is Star Trek, The Next Generation, Season 5, Episode 8, Unification Part 2, the scene in which Data creates a holographic William Riker with a hairstyle that you never saw him have. And it's pointed out by Picard that he screwed up his hair, but he is an android. Like, what is he doing? That is such a dumb moment. Like, stupid joke. I hate it so much. It takes me out of the episode, and it ruins Unification Part 2 for me. There, I said it. I said it. 5 seconds, and the whole thing is done.
By the way, there's a great line for Data in Encounter at Farpoint where he says, "I remember every fact that I'm exposed to, sir." So.
Right, like what your hair is at this exact moment that I'm talking to you.
Anybody want to get pedantic with Alex on Riker's hair in Unification?
Wow. Just when you think we can't get any nerdier.
Oh, it's only getting worse for me.
If you want to, to have some headcanon about it, you can always say that maybe Data prefers Riker with that hair. So that's how he
I like that.
Visualizes him in his head.
Yeah. So he prefers him with a beard. That's an incorrection. So maybe he prefers him with that comb over.
I love how pedantic that pick is. It's amazing. And I'm never going to be able to watch Unification now without laughing.
Way to go. We are ruining all of this. Right? Except for our undiscovered country that is untouchable.
I hope no one's listening anymore. Okay.
Jim, no one is. No one is.
You're in luck.
All right. Close out the gangly around pick. Oh, this one's going to really piss people off.
Oh, good.
This is another one of my tent pole complaints and bitches. 5 words and a hashtag. Sorry, Sirach. Not going to happen. Hashtag get me Tony Todd.
Yep.
And my episode is The Visitor, which I love, but I cannot get over the production choice to have every single character play their older selves, except for Jake, because clearly Sirach Lofton isn't going to be able to handle the weightiness of that topic and be able to deliver the performance they need to make that episode work. So let's just recast him with Tony Todd, who's awesome and amazing and makes the episode awesome, but it completely takes me out of the episode every time. And for a while I was convincing myself like, okay, well, Aaron Eisenberg can play himself older because Ferengi don't age the same way, so no problem. Oh, wait, no, they've got Bashir and Dax as their older selves, too. This makes no sense. It drives me crazy, and it affects my overall rank. The Visitor for me is number 28 at TrekRanks, and that's why. It's just
28?
It's number 28 for me for Deep Space Nine. Don't get into that because there's 27 awesome. Trust me, there's a ton of awesome Deep Space Nine. So every episode I say in front of it, you'll be like, "Oh my god, it's incredible!" But the point here is that takes me out of it. Anybody want to fire back on me on that one?
I will because I get it. I do, and especially when you see like Nog is there, that it like makes it even more obvious. I get that. But Jake is still really young looking here. And when he does his scenes where Cisco comes back and, they thought he was dead, so like the first time he comes back and he's in sick bay and Jake, starts crying and Avery Brooks gives him a hug and kiss. And that's the Jake that Sirach Lofton has. You know what I mean? I think if you just then tried to mature that, it would have maybe thrown you off too.
But the funny thing, they even aged Tony Todd in it.
Yeah.
I also feel like you're just looking at that. You're just watching that episode wrong.
It bugged me the first time I saw it. I went, wait.
But I think
everybody else. What? Why?
Jenn is right here. The fact that at the end when you see Sirach and when you see Jake as we know him, Jake is so young, and I think that juxtaposition of like that really young, innocent, like early teenage Jake versus the much older, Tony Todd version. I think that juxtaposition works so well. Yeah. And I think Sirach was too young, and you needed to see like literally the baby face Jake for it to like really drive home. So I just think you're watching it wrong.
No, the baby face part isn't in question. It's the older part.
No, I understand, but you could like I
don't have Aaron Eisenberg there. I don't know. It doesn't fit. You can't age one actor and not the other. that doesn't make sense.
Yes, you can, and they did, and it works.
There's no arguing.
I don't think they have the technology to make a child that young look like an old man on his deathbed.
But they made the Ferengi look older because
he's in a complete. Okay. He's already in a complete.
Hey, if you can go with that, have at it. I can't get over it. So, Alex, what do you got? Anything? No.
Jim, you are wrong, and here's why you're wrong. It makes it more emotionally weighty to have Cyril Lofton play the younger Jake Sisko and Tony Todd play the older Jake Sisko, because in those scenes in which you see Sirach, you really see the enormous journey that this one character has gone on. The other characters, you don't need to kind of resonate with the fact about how much time has passed and how old they are. But Jake, you really need to feel how old he is and how long this has sat with him and how much he has struggled with it. And having him be so old as to be an entirely different human being is what really sets that apart. And it means that in those scenes in which you're seeing Sirach with Avery, you just feel that distance much more acutely than you would if it was Sirach the whole way through the episode.
That's what I said, just not with a British accent. Okay.
and for a moment there, this is visitor related. Can I talk about Jadzia again one more time?
You can always talk about that.
Always.
So what takes me out of the visitor is the fact that in this alternate universe where this happened, Jadzia doesn't die. That takes me out of it. The end. I'm done. That's all I had to say.
Oh, that's actually a good one, but you're not over that.
I'm not over that. That should have been on my list.
All right. The last thing I'll say is somebody please send me a note of another show or production, TV or movie, where they aged an actor and they replaced him, but another actor next to him was aged with makeup. That doesn't work. It's the only production in the history of production that's ever done that. And it bugged me since the first time I saw it. We're going to round 2. I suck. I love The Visitor. Don't get me wrong. It's still number 28. That's
28th best.
All right, round 2. Carlos, what do you got?
All right. So my number 4 pick, my 5 words are unforgivable crime with no punishment. Hashtag it's all about the Benjamins. And it is Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 2, Episode 4, Invasive Procedures. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I love this episode. I really love this episode. However, I've been on this show many times talking about my love for Deep Space Nine. My love for Deep Space Nine knows no end. However, for a show that does such a good job of serializing that entire series, for a show that has consequences, you're thinking, Cassidy going to jail, you have a character in Quark that does something so horrible, basically allows a group of criminals and terrorists on the station, right? Okay. They almost, talking about Jadzia, literally almost killed Jadzia, right?
Yep.
And then everyone is like, oh, that's just silly old Quark. I'm like, what? This was not like one of his schemes. This is a crime that has horrible consequences on not just the character of Jadzia, but I almost said Kirk. Sisko, Kira, Bashir, the people that are left on the station, and like this episode takes me out of the entire show. I almost this Quark should have been in like a Federation prison. Like no more Quark after this episode. That's how bad. And I really feel like it's one of those instances where the writers just dropped the ball and did not really think about they needed. Quark didn't need to be the one that led these people on the station. They just needed him to do something, and it's just such a horrible way of using that character and a horrible way of not having consequences on a show that's all about consequences.
So no, you're right. It should have been Rom, but no. So you're not wrong. It always takes me out of this episode. I always think of that every time I'm watching this. They do try to kind of have. Obviously, he helps with the escape, and he helps fix everything.
Nope.
Give them a little bit of out. No, they do, but but
it's
not good enough. But
not good enough.
The best example, I don't think you gave it, was Garrick when he tries to tinker with the Defiant and blow the Founders out.
Yeah, exactly.
In
Broken Link.
Oh yeah, in Broken Link, right? But at least they referenced it with Garrick that he went to jail.
Yeah.
So that he went away for 6 months or something. So yeah, it's not you're not wrong.
It just always took me out of the show.
And you know who should be sitting right next to Quark? Well, joining him 3 years later?
Geordi.
No, Captain Sisko for poisoning an entire planet full of people with no consequences.
No.
That
was fine.
That was okay.
He can do that. He can get away with that. All right, anyone else on invasive procedures?
Good pick. I totally agree. It takes me out of it, too.
Yep. Jen, how about you? What's your round 2 pick?
Okay. It's funny. My round 2 pick is sort of similar to Carlos's. So, okay. My number 2 pick. Say it to my face. Hashtag, and also to Rom's face. This is Deep Space Nine Season 6. Odo's off-camera, in the closet apology to Kira and lack of apology to Rom and the rest of the Resistance for his betrayal during the Dominion occupation of Deep Space Nine. Okay?
Wow.
So let me recap what Odo did. Okay, this is behind the lines is where this happens, right? This is when,
And if you're cordially invited is the episode where he does.
Yes, you're cordially, but starts behind the lines. So the Resistance that's left on Deep Space Nine, it's Kara, Odo, Jake, Quark and Rom and Lita. And they come up with a plan to sabotage the Dominion's attempt to disarm the minefield that's blocking the wormhole, which is a huge deal because basically that's the only thing from keeping the Alpha Quadrant from falling is the minefield, right? So Rom has to do something in a secured conduit, that's rigged with alarms. So the plan is that Odo will run a security diagnostic at a certain time, which will take the alarms offline for like 5 minutes, and Rom can do what he needs to do, in the conduit, right, to sabotage this thing, right? So everyone does their part and gets into position, and where's Odo? He's in his quarters.
Banging the chain.
Fanoodling with the female founder. So obviously Rom gets caught and he gets held by the Dominion. They're going to execute him, right? And not only that, now the Dominion's really close to regaining control of the wormhole and basically winning the war and taking down the entire Alpha Quadrant, right? And then it gets worse because Odo doesn't show any remorse at all. Kira confronts him and he flippantly tells her, it doesn't matter. Solid problems, not my problem. I mean, that is a huge betrayal, right? So now to the non-apology. You never see him apologize to Rom or talk to him for almost getting him executed. He never apologizes to Rom or the other members of the Resistance that he let down. There's no scene with Sisko who just gives Odo control over security of the station again, even though he was just, screwing Space Hitler, He just gives him back the keys to security. The only mention of what he did at all is in relation to Kira, right? So Odo's avoiding her because he's embarrassed and blah, blah, blah. They have to talk it out. So that's when, like you said, and you were cordially invited, they leave Jezia's bachelorette party to talk. And then the next time we see them, Jezia finds them in her closet and they've talked things out. And guess what? They're good now. Guess what? I'm not good now. We deserve to see that apology because they want us to keep seeing Odo as one of the good guys. They want me to believe that he's worthy of a romance with Kara. You know what I mean? They want me to root for him. So I think we deserve to see some remorse from him, some assurance that he's back to normal Odo. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
But also by handling it that way, they made it seem more like a lover's quarrel than a deep betrayal of the entire Alpha Quadrant, as if his sin was having an affair with the founder instead of getting ramen.
Screwing Space Hitler.
Right, exactly. Like, that's not, like, if all he did was sleep with the changeling, then that's something that him and Kara could have resolved by talking it out in the closet. But the other stuff wasn't. And it to no end pisses me off and kind of like puts a damper on the character of Odo from then on.
It's a good thing that Kira doesn't carry a grudge and forgives quickly. So,
right.
It's fine.
Yeah, and that's right. Like, and I can understand, okay, fine, she forgives him, but how would you ever consider him like someone you'd want to have a romantic relationship with after he did that?
Thankfully, Quark was there to save Rom because if it was up to Carlos, he wouldn't have been. So,
wow.
Yeah.
But that's right.
What you find out in that universe, in that version of the universe, the founders would have been no war, so it's fine.
That is a great pick, interesting pick. I always remember that being a little bit of a cop out, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Alex, you got what's your round 2 pick?
My round 2 pick. All right, Carlos, prepare yourself for this.
Oh God, I'm holding on.
5-word summary. Totally undermines an amazing character. # redeemed in 2009. It's Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, and the execrable scene in which Uhura doesn't know how to speak Klingon. And a scene that is played for laughs and is actually a funny scene. If you've never seen Star Trek before, you don't understand the characters, and you don't know what those characters are supposed to do. The idea that as communications officer, Uhura would not speak the language of the Federation's greatest enemy when that would be like the thing that everyone would be forced to learn, so that you never found yourself in a situation where you couldn't understand somebody. And as the Federation, who like to talk their way out of things, talk your way out of it. And the fact that she's reading from this Klingon dictionary and it's like she's never seen a language before is totally ridiculous. I hate it. And coming back to what Jim said earlier, I actually like large portions of The Undiscovered Country, but there are portions of it that I just absolutely hate and detest. And this is one of those scenes because it's, Nicholas Meyer brings a lot of great things to Star Trek, but and in some ways it's good to have somebody who has a perspective that it comes at it totally fresh. But this is a Stuart Bayard level of not understanding the characters and not understanding their motivation. It is terrible.
Hey, that's a great pick, Alex. Carlos?
Wow. I choose to overlook this because I love this movie so much. And you're not wrong, Alex. You're not wrong. I still love that scene.
Both
of you are wrong. I'm sorry. I understand what you're saying, but I don't know. It's one of those that I'm very happy to be like, yep, it's fun.
That's why we love it. That's great.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. Great pick, Alex. I'm on your side there, Alex.
not quite a duplicate, but that's 2 Undiscovered Country mentions. All right. Let's keep it rolling. We'll close out round 2. Here is my pick. 5 words and a hashtag. Meanest episode of Trek ever. #The Doctor is not this vile.
Yes.
And you've heard me rant about it before. It's Arthur from Voyager. I hate this episode. And I totally get that. I think some of you Terran automatons are fooled into liking this episode because the holodeck scenes are funny and the Lieutenant Marseille with a mustache. I hate it. In a real world setting for this episode, they get the tone all wrong. I mean, you have to treat this as serious content. It's not just a romp. It's serious what he's done in slandering this crew. And the things that the Doctor writes about his friends he would never have done this, not in a million years. The writers of this episode, who is one of my favorites, is Mike Sussman. I love him, and the story with Brandon Braga. They have completely betrayed the character. And I know that he's uppity and that he feels maligned, but he would never be this vile, this mean-spirited. I mean, he's got Janeway murdering somebody. He's got Tom Paris cheating on his wife, all these things. But the two key things here. So the episode sucks just for the fact that it ends with this ridiculous hearing. It's like it becomes a courtroom. So which is trash. It is a smarmy literary agent. You've heard me say this before. If there are still smarmy agents in the 24th century, there will be no Star Trek Utopia. That is terrible writing. I hate that scene. But the thing that really drives me crazy, and you have to put yourself in this context, 100% the first thing that the Voyager crew has to do if they ever get home to the Alpha Quadrant, which, by the way, happens 5 episodes later, they're going to have a press conference and defend themselves. Because everyone on Earth thinks they're the worst people ever. That's how badly the Doctor betrayed them. It absolutely kills me. This episode is completely antithetical to Star Trek. I hate it. Let's go back to Terran Ranks. Any other comments?
I 100% agree, and I'm so angry at myself for not having this on my list because it is so cruel and mean-spirited.
So cruel.
And it's like this is what you really think of us.
That's it. That's not made up. That's what he thinks of.
This is what. Yeah, exactly. Oh,
My beef with this episode is that I actually think that there could have been an interesting story here.
Yeah.
But this episode should have been in season 1. The fact that this happens, because I think it could have like the fact that this happens like 4 episodes before the finale or whatever it is. I don't remember. Like I know it's like very, very
5
late.
episodes, literally.
Right. Exactly. Like that makes no sense. Actually, it would have been an interesting story very early on when the Doctor is feeling like they're because in earlier episodes they treat the Doctor as less than human, no pun intended, right?
No, that's fair.
Right. So like had he done like this as like a way of like dealing with it, and then like it would have led to like a realization that actually we need to be better to each other. Like, but the fact that this comes when it comes in the series is what's infuriating to me, because I agree with you. I think the show is mean-spirited. But I think that there was a story here of how the Doctor feels that he's been treated. So this is his outlet, but it shouldn't have been 5 episodes before Voyager goes off the air. That's crazy.
You could have also told this story without being so cruel. It's cruel. It's vile is probably not the best word. It's cruel, and it's just it drives me crazy. Alex, any quick one before we move on?
I'm 100% with you, and I'm 100% with Carlos. It's an awful episode that has a kernel of an interesting idea buried so deep within it and requires shoveling so much cow excrement that it's not even worth finding.
It's just a poor man's The Measure of a Man, and that final scene with all the holograms working in the mine. I just want to break my TV.
Yeah, that kind of makes me angry too, because are they sentient holograms that they have in the mine? No, or is it bad to use any hologram to do work? You know, like what are they trying to say there?
It's cheap. All right, let's go on to round 1 of the things we just can't get over. Carlos, what's your number 1 pick?
Okay, this one cuts deep, ladies and gentlemen. This one cuts really deep. I take this one extremely personal. So 5 words. Why did you do it? Hashtag, do you really want to hurt me? And it is Star Trek Into Darkness. Just all of it.
Should have known this was going to be on the list.
So I love Star Trek 09. Like, really love Star Trek 09. Like, I love that movie so much. I think it's fun. I think it's perfect. I think it's everything that like that kind of Star Trek needed to be at the time. And I just have such amazing memories of first going to see that movie and what it was. And what was amazing to me about Star Trek 09 is that they earned themselves the ability to do whatever they wanted, because they addressed canon in, I think, in a really creative yesterday's Enterprise sort of way. This is not the same crew. This is a different story. They could have done anything and everything. And what do? They remake poorly Wrath of Khan. And it just, I remember I took my wife opening night. So opening night, we went to see it at the IMAX in London. And the moment the lights went up, my wife turned to me and looked at my face, and she just said, "Oh my God, you didn't like it. I'm going to hear about this for years." I hadn't said anything, but she just knew it. And I was just, because I think the first half of that movie, there's some good things, and it's leading up to something interesting. I think the opening, like James Bondish type, like teaser, is really cool and different. The volcano sequence, the Chronos sequence, the death of Pike. I really like all of it. And then when he reveals that he's Khan, and by the way, I never really had a problem with the casting or anything like that, but I was I was just really like, the entire movie just fell apart. And I saw it twice in the theater, and I've never seen it since. So like, that's it. Like, I've never seen it since. It's the only Star Trek movie I never bought. Like, I've like erased it from my mind. And I just think they just do such a disservice to not just Wrath of Khan, but to themselves. They literally could have done anything that they wanted in that universe, and that's what they choose to make. And I'll never, for the life of me, understand it.
All right, the one thing I'll say, and I like this movie, I defend it. I totally get where you're coming from. The one thing I will defend is, I don't have it's not a remake. It's an homage. I mean, that is the truth.
Sure. Well, okay. I mean,
tapping into those things. And I was excited about the idea. And I know a lot of people were, like, from the get-go, hated the idea of any kind of retelling of previous stories we've seen with maybe a slightly different take. I love that idea. I was so excited about that. And so I went into it with that mindset, and I don't mind this movie at all. I actually very much enjoy it, like it. But I totally get where you're coming from, and you're obviously not in the minority. Alex,
but I challenge you about the homage, because I agree it's not an exact remake, take for take, or anything like that. But the ending, the ending is like the sacrifice and the switch of the role reversal. Right. I think it's not a remake, but it's much more than an homage. I think that it just doesn't work.
They're tapping into the source material and telling a different story. So, and by the way, the one thing that I always defend on this, and I'll say it here quickly, is that what Wrath of Khan showed you about these two friends losing each other at the end of their friendship and realizing what they mean to you, what they flipped is that you've got Spock and Kirk learning what they mean to each other at the beginning of their friendship. And I think that was really powerful. I love that moment. But
I see that's what's wrong with it. The reason that moment doesn't work for me, and it cheapens it, is that Wrath of Khan is 15 years into their friendship. They've earned that. There's gravitas in that friendship. No, it doesn't. That's why it doesn't work.
They're learning what they mean to each other at the beginning of their friendship. That's important too. Jenn and Alex, go.
Okay. I cannot get past the whitewashing of Khan. I just can't. And that just darkens the entire movie to me.
That's fair.
But before it came out, and it was not, the rumors, oh, he's Khan, or no, he's not. And they said, and they said, oh no, he's not Khan, they lied. But I'm in my head, I'm like, oh, he's not Khan. Star Trek wouldn't do that. Star Trek wouldn't do that. And then I get into the theater, and sure enough, he's Khan. And my jaw just dropped, and I was done with it.
Have you heard this great headcanon fix? It's somebody suggested it. It's really brilliant.
Ooh,
at the end, they had shown all the frozen, because they show them all frozen. Hmm. If they had just shown him frozen and gone down, and his nameplate actually had like Harrison on it or something else, hey, it wasn't Khan. It was just a guy saying he was Khan. They woke up a different guy, because they all say they're Khan in that kind of context. And I was like, that actually really worked. That would have been awesome.
That would have worked. But yeah, because there's no reason he couldn't have just been John Harrison. Yeah. And they could have had the exact same movie and had him not be called Khan.
Yeah, they really, that one little thing could have changed the whole.
But just a note on the whitewashing, it's just like Khan is meant to be like South Asian, right? And I mean, the reason it doesn't really bother me is because, like, Ricardo Montalban was Mexican.
Right.
So like there's this idea from the 60s, just like, well, he's not, okay, he's not a white actor. Okay, so he can play the South Asian guy. And so like, I've always kind of had an issue with that from the beginning. So like, like this idea that like, all right, well, here's a brown actor. He can just play another kind of brown. Like that to me is a little bit of, that is incredibly problematic.
I totally get that. But also in that particular movie, in the Kelvin universe, every single actor looks exactly like the character they're playing from the original series.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I get that. But it never bothered me because I think originally it's a lot more problematic.
Right.
Than just
I totally get your point there. Yeah, totally.
Hey, Alex, anything you want to say about Star Trek Into Darkness?
I enjoyed Star Trek Into Darkness more when it was called Star Trek Enterprise Season 3. This was a post 9/11 movie that came 10 years too late.
Yeah.
And I felt like a lot of the things that it said had already been said and had been said
That's
better,
a good point.
On a political level by other movies. Jim, you've worked on me over the years on the Wrath of Khan dialogue flip, and I've gone from being just thinking that it's total garbage to understanding your point, but I'm not fully there yet on embracing it as actually being good.
I'm fully in the minority on this one. I get it. Okay, although, we're going to reveal some numbers later that I think are going to be surprising to people. Okay, let's go to Jenn's number one pick.
Okay. I also feel very deeply about my number one pick, Carlos. So we're getting into some deep stuff here.
Let's go deep. Yeah.
Okay. My 5 words in a hashtag. How could you, you monsters? Hashtag. Someday I'll be leaving for my starship too. Guess what? No, you won't, because you'll be dead. This is Star Trek Generations, the horrible death of Rene Picard. Okay?
So this is a great pick.
I mean, okay.
This is
the best pick of the day.
Terrible. Next Generation's ending. But guess what? There's more adventures coming in the movies. Great. So you get into the theater, and what happens? Picard just gets the most devastating, life-altering news that you could possibly get. And Jean-Luc Picard feels like, as much as a fictional character can, he feels like a real person to me. So when he got this horrible news, my heart dropped for him. And I really, really despised that trope of, killing a character for no reason, but to motivate the main character. They did this for no other reason than to give Picard grief. And it's just, I find it very lazy, the trope in general, but they pile it on. The scene where he confesses to what happened to Troy, and he talks about it. He's like, oh, I was going to take Renee to see Starfleet Academy next month, and he's the closest thing I had to a son. And now there'll be no more Picards. And it just turns into grief porn. And it's just, and okay. I don't think they really put much thought into the implications of this death at all. Who dies in a fire in the 24th century, right? Who? There's no, they definitely have in the 21st century portable
fire alarm.
Even like fire suppression that you stick in a room like you do a smoke detector, and they puts out fire in the 21st century. So it's ridiculous that they die in a fire. But okay, so that means they died in a fire because of Robert, right? We know Robert shuns technology, right? We know he's a lot of.
Wow, you were going deep.
Yeah. So this beautiful child is destroyed because of his father's stubborn refusal of technology. Awful. And this makes family almost unbearable to watch. I did a Generations and then Family double feature, and I do not recommend it at all because it just makes it even more devastating. And in a final injustice, they decided to just cast a different actor as they did.
Thank you. That was going to be
like, they cared so little about this character. This character was just like a faceless way to get Picard to grieve over something to them, and it's the whole thing is just disgusting.
Counselor Troy, please report to TrekRanks right now.
Right. In the theater, I was literally like, well, wait, who are those guys? Wait, why? Did Robert? Who are they? Oh, that's supposed to be Robert and Renee. I figured that out later. I was like, oh.
Do they even show Robert in the pictures?
No, they.
No, they just showed Renee. But it's right. That is crazy. The fact because they could have just used a picture from the episode. Like it could have been an older picture of it.
Well, but then they see Renee. He sees Renee, quote unquote, in the Nexus. He's in that horrible, creepy.
Oh yes.
That's. But it's just
my God, that is so creepy. Picard's fantasies are like creepier than Geordi's, and that's saying a lot.
Spoiler alert!
All right, settle down with the generation page here.
Spoiler alert: the Nexus is in my secondary system. All right. Alex, I know you love Generations, and that's awesome because you should. Any comments on this before we go to your round one pick?
So I guess we will not be seeing a family Star Trek Generations episode of Trek, right?
We should do movies.
Oh, yes.
This is a great pick. I hate to say anything negative about Generations, but it does sideline the character of Picard for most of the movie. Like his head is entirely not in the game until the final act. And I think given it's the first time we've seen him on the big screen, that's a true travesty, which luckily was rectified by him having such a prominent role in Star Trek First Contact.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Alex, let's hear your number one pick.
All right, my last pick, I went after something Carlos loved. This pick, Jim, I'm afraid I'm going after something you love. My 5-word summary: space is 3-dimensional. Hashtag just go around it. My pick is Star Trek: The Next Generation, Season 5, Episode 1, Redemption Part 2, an episode that, were it not for the totally ridiculous tachyon detection grid, would be one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek of all time.
It is my favorite.
It is such a stupid idea. It is so awful. It's so awful that there is a scene in which Sela and the Romulan commander are looking at a screen on which you have the starships and the lines joining them, and then an enormous black space around this grid. And they're going, we just don't know how to get through this. Just go around it. Space is 3-dimensional. Go up, go down, go from one side, go to the other side. It doesn't matter. It might have made sense if they'd come up with some way of showing a tachyon detection grid that covered, like hundreds of light years, because then they never could have got there in time. But they go out of their way in the episode to talk about how few ships they have to make it work. And the shots you have, they're all right next to each other. So why this? It would have taken them 5 minutes to go around this grid. Why they spend half of the episode worrying about how to get through it and it being defeated and all of that. It's total rubbish. It ruins Redemption for me. 2 episodes which I otherwise think are fabulous, fabulous episodes, but I can't watch them because every time I watch Redemption Part 2, I am on my feet screaming at the television about how stupid this trope is. They made that mistake frequently in 1990s Star Trek, which is that space is 3-dimensional. You can go up, you can go down, you can go side to side. We're not on the ocean. Rant over. Redemption Part 2, terrible. Tachyon detection grid, terrible. I'm sorry.
Who let this jerk on the show? All-time favorite Next Generation episode. You're not wrong. So Alex just ripped a coup de grams and was being really pedantic, everybody.
Yeah, bring it. That's how we do things here on Terran Ranks.
Exactly.
I love it. All right, Jen, any quick one before I get to my last pick?
No, yeah. I mean, thanks for we've said this throughout the show, but thanks for ruining Redemption for me, Alex.
All right. Our final pick, my number one pick, 5 words and a hashtag. Oh my God, this looks at the hashtag. This is great since this has come up a few times on this episode. His name's LeVar, not Laverne. Hashtag show some respect. It is Stuart Baird ruining Star Trek Nemesis. I will never get over it.
It could be nothing else.
This guy. Listen, he might have been like a seasoned professional in the industry. And I know he was a well-respected editor, but he was a horrible choice to direct this movie. And when you think about it, it's probably the worst single production decision ever made by executives on Trek, because ultimately the reception of this movie is what, and the quality of the movie is what killed or ended TNG. So hopefully we're going to get the Picard series, so we'll get a little bit more of that. But this is what killed TNG movies. So this guy, first of all, he didn't really respect Star Trek and what all the actors on the show brought to their characters on the screen. And there's the famous story, which is in my 5 words and a hashtag, where apparently he called LeVar Burton Laverne on the set for like 6 weeks. That's what, and he thought Geordi was an alien as well. And
are you kidding me? I've never heard that story.
No,
I'm angry now.
LeVar tells that story. And he made so many bad choices. So everything from, like, he eliminates Shinzon's backstory, which is in the deleted scenes and the extras.
Yeah.
He got the tone all wrong. I remember him pontificating about this big reveal of Shinzon down the stairs and how dramatic it was going to be. That scene is terrible. Everybody already knew what Tom Hardy was playing and doing. That scene is so ineffectual. It drives me crazy. So I'm going to give you an example of what something that a bad director does. And this is one that just kills me. They make this decision to have Worf searching this huge area of the desert, and he happens to stand right next to Data's arm, and he has the arm grab his foot from the sand, and they add this ominous and manipulative music cue just to kind of get a quick scare jump from the audience for no reason at all. It's so out of place. It's a waste of time. And there's so much story here to be told in John Logan's script with Romulus and the whole thing. It just drives me crazy. They just made so many bad choices. And this quote from Herman Zimmerman says it all. He says and Herman Zimmerman is one of my favorite production people on Trek. He was on my Mount Rushmore. He's a really good editor. And before we started shooting, he was charming. As soon as the camera started rolling, he became impossible to work with. Nothing satisfied him. If Herman Zimmerman is like the nicest guy says that, this guy's a problem. And then the last thing I'll just say is, more than just burying Stuart Baird, which I already just did, the real problem here is that they had just picked Jonathan Frakes. I'm telling you, there is enough of a good script here that they could have made a quality movie, and it would have been a well-received movie, and Next Generation would have continued if Jonathan Frakes had directed this movie. There's no doubt in my mind. 100% blame Stuart Baird.
But Jonathan Frakes directed Insurrection. That's the reason he didn't get this one.
Oh. No. Terran Ranks is over.
Terran Ranks is just truth bomb after truth bomb. Okay? I agree with you. I don't hate Nemesis. I agree with everything you said about Stuart Baird, and I've heard a lot of the actors at conventions say, like, everything about him. It's got to be true. And the way he talked about the show and the characters in interviews, even on the DVDs, he was a wrong pick 100%. Right. But I do think that I agree with you. The reason I don't hate it is because I do think that I like some of the sequences. I like several elements of it. I love the fact that the away mission, we can talk about, the fact that Worf literally steps on the arm and things like that. But I love the fact that it looks really alien. That scene doesn't look like anything else on Star Trek. There's a lot in the movie that I enjoy. But I think the overall it doesn't come together. And I think that had they shot a lot more of John Logan's script, the background, like the really kind of fleshing out of Romulus and Remus. The thing that gets me against Nemesis is the fact that there's this entire a theme of duality, right? You have the two Picards, the two Datas, Romulans, Remus, but then you have, why are the Remans these Nosferatu looking horrible thing? I never understood that. Shouldn't they just look like Romulans? I never got that. So I'm with you. I think Nemesis is a hugely wasted opportunity. It is clearly the reason it's really the reason why it killed Next Generation movies before their time. Completely. But I think that it's just a shame because there's enough there to have done something awesome.
For sure.
So, and Jim, I had never heard that story about LeVar Burton. You're directing a Star Trek Next Generation movie, and you think that Geordi LaForge is an alien? That's just is flippantly like.
Well, he didn't. I mean, clearly, all the cast said on numerous occasions that he didn't care about what had come before. He just wanted to make it.
Ugh.
So he just wanted to make the movie that he wanted to make. He did the past didn't matter.
Blah.
That was really bad. Alex, any last comments?
Just because your pick's not pedantic enough, I actually have a secondary systems from Nemesis, which is that
Let's do it.
The Riker Viceroy fight scene takes place on the lowest deck of the ship, and yet it ends when Riker kicks the Viceroy down a very long, dark shaft, and he must fall maybe 5 or 6 floors, but they're on the lowest deck. So there's no way. And also, it could have been, I mean, it's like, where are they? Is it a turbo lift shaft? If that's the case, why is there an enormous gangway across the middle of it? It just bothers the hell out of me.
No, that whole fight scene is terrible. I mean, those are the things that I think Jonathan Frakes would have had a better handle. All right, let's move on to some more secondary systems picks. I got one from Alex right there. Carlos, you got any secondary systems picks?
Yeah, I had an interesting one. So one of the things when I was talking about my Cardassian Avenger team style meetup, one of the other ways that I was considering was the fact that it always seemed like a very missed opportunity that they didn't do a Picard Guinan episode. I always wanted to know why, and it wasn't, I mean, Whoopi Goldberg was in like 30 something, I think like almost 30, if not more than 30 episodes of Next Generation. So like, there should have been an episode. I should have. I wish there would have been an episode where we really explored that relationship, because it's obviously, you know, they have a very deep connection, and they talk about the fact that that they love each other in a way that their connection is beyond just kind of the physical. Like there's something there, and something they allude to something big and science fictiony, and obviously later in the Nexus, and then you have them meeting in Time Zero, like in 19th century San Francisco. So I just wish that to me was always like a missed opportunity, and I hope to God that Guinan, like there are a couple of characters that I want really to show up in Picard. I don't want it to be like a greatest hits series, but I hope that Guinan features in some way, because there's so much unexplored history and relationship there.
Yeah, I like that. Time Zero is probably the closest they came, but that would have been awesome. Jen, any secondary systems picks?
Okay, I have a pretty pedantic one. That is,
I'll allow it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a sucker for flashback clips. You know what I mean? Like montage clip. I love those, and I like to cry to those. But the flashbacks and what you leave behind, they chose to frame them as memories. They chose that.
It
so
makes no sense.
Meanwhile, I mean, there's 3 people who have memories that they shouldn't have in this clip montage. Worf and O'Brien seem to remember Armand Bashir. Jake seems to remember the Visitor. I understand they couldn't get Jadzia. There was some reason they couldn't have Jadzia, but they have Worf, and then they have Worf having 2 Ezri memories, including a kiss. The kiss really pissed me off. That's what he's thinking about when he's leaving DS9. Is kissing Ezri. Oh, it really takes me.
I didn't know where you were going with. I thought you were going with Jadzia missing from. Not
but
I
get that.
Like the memories don't match up to the characters. Yeah. That's hilarious.
I never thought. The only thing I never thought about that, but now that you're right.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for ruining what you.
Yeah.
Alex, any quick secondary system?
Yeah, I got one more. The motion picture Enterprise is a totally different ship than the original series Enterprise. It's not refit.
Right.
It's not the same ship. The source is not the same. The star drive section's not the same. The nacelles aren't the same. The shape of the ship isn't the same. The interior isn't the same. And yet they walk around it being like, wow, this amazing refit that we've done. It's not the same ship. At some point, they subbed it out for a different one, and they just said to the crew, like, oh yeah, it's the same ship. We just made a lot of changes to it. Rubbish. Stupid. Great ship, though.
How do you feel about Discovery having the Enterprise, Alex?
Well, and that's part of the reason why this bothers me so much. That's part of the reason why this bothers me so much, is because people are so hard on the fact that the Discovery Enterprise looks different than how it appeared in the Cage or how it appeared in the original series. but yet they have no problem whatsoever with the fact that the original series Enterprise goes into dry dock and an entirely different ship comes out the other side. And they're like, well, it's explained as a refit, therefore it's okay, but for some reason the Discovery thing isn't okay? No, total rubbish.
I love that. I love that claim. Not the same ship. End of story. Won't have any discussion because that is a great call. All right, I got a couple here I'm going to rattle off really quick. I wanted to get Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, into this show because it is my least 2 favorite hours of Star Trek ever. And here's the thing about this movie. If you want to cast Sean Connery as the star of your movie and you can't get Sean Connery to be the star of your movie, do not, I repeat, do not hire a B-grade actor to basically just play a poor man's Sean Connery. It's a terrible imitation. It's ridiculous. Boris Lukenbill is terrible in this movie. He's awful. He's putrid. I just never understood that. I also got the measure of a man always, hey, Riker, Pinocchio's strings have been cut. Don't tell me that he just needed to do, that he was just doing his job. He wasn't just doing his job. He did his job. He was being a dick. You didn't need to go that far, Riker. You didn't need to go that far. Okay? You're just mocking the guy now. You did your job. You defended against him. You prosecuted him. Don't be a dick.
Maybe this is why Data gives him crap hair in Unification Part 2.
Exactly. He's getting back to him. He's getting back. All right, and then I have, obviously I love The Wrath of Khan. This one's totally pedantic. This one got me when I was like 14 years old in the theater watching, and they really should have just had Chekhov say that they were on Ceti Alpha 4, not Ceti Alpha 6. It makes so much more sense. For Ceti Alpha 5 to be in the 6th position in the solar system, and this is assuming, of course, that we know that the crew of the Reliant can actually count 6 planets in the system. If Ceti Alpha 6 was destroyed, then Ceti Alpha 5's orbit would have to move all the way outside Ceti Alpha 7 for it to be the 6th planet in the system, and for Chekhov and them to reasonably assume that they were on the wrong planet. If they just made it Ceti Alpha 4, then it just goes in order, and it just makes so much more sense. That one bugged me the first time I watched it in the theater. All right. I was going to give a special shout out to the Nexus, the worst plot device.
No, get out. It's fine.
All right.
What if you want to go to the Nexus?
We're done. We're done. That was an unbelievably awesome dispatch of disinformation. Just the kind of thing you expect to hear here on Terran TrekRanks. And now it's time to recap our proclamations for everyone.
Regeneration cycle incomplete.
All right, quick recap of all of our choices. Carlos, run down your 5.
My number 5 was the last minute of Voyager's Caretaker.
Love it.
Number 4 was Insurrection.
Good pick.
Number 3 was the Avengers-style Cardassian fighting team of bringing back Cito Jaxa, Ro Laren, and Thomas Riker. Wasted opportunity. Number 2 was DS9's Invasive Procedures. And last, but certainly, definitely least, is Star Trek Into Darkness.
I can't believe that wasn't your number 1 to start the day. I mean, you switched it. All right, so you had 1 each from Voyager, TNG, and the Kelvin timeline, and 2 from Deep Space Nine. Jen, break down your 5.
Okay, my number 5 pick is Jadzia Dax wearing a red uniform instead of a blue one in Trials and Tribulations. Number 4 is the character assassination of Worf, son of Moog, in Let He Who Is Without Sin. Number 3 is never finding out the identity of Future Guy in Enterprise. Number 2 is Odo's off-screen apology to Kira and non-apology to Rom and others in Deep Space Nine Season 6. And my number 1 pick is the death of Renee Picard in Star Trek Generations.
Amazing, amazing list. You had 3 from Deep Space Nine. Wow. And 1 from Enterprise and 1 from TNG. All right, Alex, break down your 5.
Okay, number 5 is the way that Voyager never sorted out where it was and who it should and which alien races it should and shouldn't be meeting. Number 4 is the opening scene in The Wounded where O'Brien and Keiko might as well have just met each other despite having gotten married 2 episodes previously.
They're capers.
Those little dark things. My third choice was Data totally screwing up Riker's hairstyle in Unification Part 2, despite the fact that he's an android with photographic memory. Number 2 is the character assassination that Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country performs against a wonderful character of Uhura by the fact that she doesn't speak Klingon. And number 1 is the just awful, awful, awful tachyon detection grid from The Next Generation Redemption Part 2 that it would have been the easiest thing in the world to have defeated if the Romulan warbirds would have just realized that they could go around it.
You really had to rub that in. And you apparently hate The Next Generation. You had 3 TNG picks and 1 each from Voyager and TOS.
So here's my prime directive, which is horrible choices in things I love.
Okay, I love it. That's
Alex, what's your favorite series? I don't think I know that.
Next Generation.
Okay, that makes sense then. You know, because you're a little bit
sense.
harder on your favorite. You know, same way with me. Mine is Deep Space Nine, and I have 3 Deep Space Nine picks.
Me too.
Me too. All right, my
shut up, Jenn.
5 picks were from Next Generation, Relics, and the Dyson Sphere, and Geordi just being a jerk. From TOS, my number 4 pick, The Undiscovered Country and The Search for Boots. My number 3 pick in the gangly around from Deep Space Nine was the recasting of Sirach Lofton with Tony Todd in The Visitor. I can't get over it. My number 2 is the cruelest episode in the history of Trek. I don't like it. Voyager's author. And my number 1 is Stuart Baird, that loser, for his direction of Nemesis. So I had 2 from TNG and 1 each from TOS, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. We had no duplicates, although we did have 2 mentions of The Undiscovered Country. And we also had 5 different movies mentioned. So that is a rarity on TrekRanks. So there's a lot of movie issues that we can't get over. And here's the breakdown of the picks. I love this. Discovery gets off scot-free. It gets 0 picks. We had 1 from Enterprise and 1 from the Kelvin timeline, 2 from TOS, both the Undiscovered Country, 3 from Voyager, 6 from Deep Space Nine, and leading the way was 7 from the Next Generation. So obviously we love the Next Generation, as Alex just said. All right, as we do every week, we are now going to check in on some general feedback from some of our loyal Terran subjects.
Don't take that tone with us, Terran.
All right, so we did have a few Terran dissidents dare to issue some of their feedback to us on some of our previous shows, but we're not going to discuss that today because all those traitors have been sent straight to the agony booth. What we are going to recap this week here in episode 47 of Terran TrekRanks, we thought we'd give you a quick breakdown of the most mentioned episodes on TrekRanks through 47 episodes. So here's a quick breakdown of some of these picks. I'm going to give you the top 10, and there was 6 episodes tying at the 8th position with 6 mentions each, and they are Star Trek Into Darkness with 6, Star Trek Beyond also with 6, For the Uniform from Deep Space Nine, and from TOS, Balance of Terror. And then I'm going to highlight the highest finish for Discovery is Battle at the Binary Stars with 6 mentions. And the highest episode for Next Generation is Redemption with 6 mentions. That's mostly because I love it and always mention it. All right, we'll move up to the next rank at number 6. There's 2 with 7 picks each. That's Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home with 7, and Deep Space Nine, In the Pale Moonlight with 7 mentions. At number 5, the highest finish for Deep Space Nine with 8 mentions is Past Tense, which is pretty cool. At number 4, I can't believe how many of these were mentioned today. From Enterprise with 9 mentions is Broken Bow. Tied for number 2 with 10 mentions, both the highest for TOS, so 2 TOS with 10 mentions, We have The City on the Edge of Forever with 10. And just for you, Carlos, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country.
Mm-hmm.
And number one, this is pretty cool. It's actually number one by a long shot with 13 overall picks. And it is Star Trek 2009 from the Kelvin timeline.
Really?
It's just so popular. And if you want to get Kelvin timeline in, you're probably gonna talk about it.
Yeah.
Because the other ones, Into Darkness is horrible, and Beyond awesome. Is mediocre at best.
They're all awesome.
I said it.
Get him off this podcast, Jim.
You guys you're all officially on report, and I want to thanks everyone again for giving us all this great feedback. Keep those lists coming to me at TrekRanks so we can retweet them, but we also want to hear from you. So put together your own list of top 5 things you just can't get over. Actually, I don't want to see these. Don't say anything. I really don't want to see them.
You're opening up a real can of worms here.
Yeah. All right. You can call us at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527. That's 609-512-LLAP. Seriously, do not send me your list. I don't want to see them. All right.
I beg you to send Jim the nitpickiest stuff you can find.
Yes.
No. All right, and on the next episode of Trek Ranks, you are going to get goosebumps. I promise you're going to get goosebumps because we're doing our top 5 chill-inducing moments. So whether you call them goosebumps or cold shivers or the heebie-jeebies, we're picking those chill-inducing moments that make the hair on your arm stand on end. So Carlos, Jenn, and Alex, if you could highlight one great chill-inducing moment, what's the first thing that pops into your mind, Carlos?
I immediately Martok being a changeling in Apocalypse Rising.
I love that pick. That's a great one.
That's so funny you just said that, Carlos, because my very first flash was finding out that Bashir was a changeling.
Oh,
I mean, my jaw literally dropped, and I could it's tingles. Yeah,
those are good. Alex, how about you?
The final few seconds of the Star Trek Discovery Season 1 finale, Will You Take My Hand, when the NCC 1701 appears.
Oh,
I totally got goosebumps then. That's a great pick.
I cried.
We're going to have our good buddy Adam Drozen on that show. So it's going to be the two of us. So we are going to need your list on that one because I know we're going to miss a lot. And there's a lot of awesome goosebump moments. So, all right. So before we wrap it up here, just a huge thanks to all of our Mirror Universe guests tonight, including Carlos, the Reliant Miranda, Alex, Tiberius Perry, and Jenn, Regina Andor, Tifft. Any final thoughts on Terran TrekRanks, you guys?
All your picks were awful and they all suck.
Yes, it's same to you.
And I'm surprised you survived the episode, Jim.
Just barely. This is the biggest mistake we've ever made.
We should do it again in episode, what would it be, 94?
Yeah.
So 94, we'll revisit.
Or 74. Or 74. Hey, Carlos, we're not doing that. Great job, everybody. But now we need to get going again. It looks like there's another ion storm moving in on our location. So anyway, before we go, I think it's just want to acknowledge everyone again for engaging with us here on episode 47 of Terran TrekRanks. As always, I want to close by saying, what will it be? Past or future? Tyranny or freedom? It's up to you.
Better hope he didn't poison them. Maybe in our universe he'd do something like that. But not over here. Over here, everything's alternate. So he's a nice guy. which means the tube grubs here should be poisonous, because they're not poisonous on our side. But if Brunt gave us poisonous tube grubs, it would mean he wasn't as nice as we think he is. But he has to be nice, because our Brunt isn't.
Rom, you're driving me crazy.
It's not me, brother. It's this alternate universe. It just doesn't make any sense.
More tube grubs.
Yes, please. No. Yes!